You're listening to Tom
and Katy
on the Tom and Talk podcast. Let's chop it up. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tom.
Hey guys, it's Katy.
And we are on the Tom and Talk podcast, episode 3.
Episode 3. We're so glad you're listening today.
This is exciting.
It is exciting. So I have a question for you, babe. Well, I wanted to tell you something. I wanted to start the show this way. I was looking at a website and this teacher asked a bunch of kids some questions relating to marriage, and I just thought this one was hilarious. It says, how can a stranger tell if two people are married?
I have no idea.
Well, the first boy, so there's two answers. The first boy says, you might have to guess based on whether they seem to be yelling at the same kids. And then another little girl said, it's love if they order one of those desserts that are on fire. They like to order those because it's just like how their hearts are on fire. Isn't that so funny?
Those from kids?
Yeah, those were kids that wrote those answers.
That's funny.
But I just thought it'd be a good way to start out today's episode. So today's episode is called
True Story.
True Story. And since you guys are now on the 3rd episode joining with us, we wanted to talk about how we met and kind of our story, just so you guys can get to know us a little bit better.
So I guess we'll begin before we met. I got started later in life when it comes to college. I didn't start my freshman year of college. I was 26 years old. So we talked about planning last time. I did not have a plan for life. I was just kind of living life as it was. I did have girlfriends.
What? No, I'm just kidding. I already knew that.
I had girlfriends, and I think the longest relationship I had was 4 months, 3 or 4 months, I believe it was. And I will admit I was naive in what it means to be in a relationship. I had a lot of hurts, and I believe those relationships they weren't bad. Like, the girls weren't bad or anything like that, but I didn't really have a plan for life. I was just living life. I was just going from job to job and things like that. So coming into college, I come off of these relationships, and I had a really bad breakup before I went to college.
Those are rough.
Yeah. And so I of course, there were girls that I liked, but I was just tired of getting hurt.
Yeah.
You know? So I focused on school and education, and I was involved with music and just trying to write. I started rapping at that time. So that was really fun, just trying to find a community at the school, that people that were like-minded in that area. And I found some. It was really cool just being able to experience that. So there were, like I said, there were girls at college. I was older. So, we're all in our 20s. I was just maybe, 4 years older than some of them. And maybe a little bit less. I don't know. But there were some girls that I liked, and I didn't really know how to express that. And so I want to talk about specifically this one experience I had because it was transformational for my life. During college, in the summertime, I really didn't want to go back home. I wanted to stay in the area. So I found this camp where I was able to go and be the worship leader.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And there was a girl there that I really liked. Camp I is a thing. Do you know what that is?
Camp I?
Camp I, not the sushi place.
That's what I was thinking of, Camp I.
No, but camp, they call it Camp I, is when you're around the same people for a couple months, you're just like, man, they look good. And so you're in this little community of, maybe 20, 30 people, and people start to get attracted,
Have feelings, catching feelings.
So I don't want to get into the full details of everything that happened, but I really like this girl. And I told her that I liked her. And she's like, I want to like you, but I don't. And of course that made me feel horrible in that moment. And the only place I knew to go to was to God. So I would pray. I would skip lunch and just go sit in the woods and pray. And I remember this one night we had these, it was like a night camp. So the kids would come and they do a lot of the activities at night. Well, I had went and found a bench and I was just pouring my heart out to God. I was praying for maybe like 3 hours.
Wow.
I think it was a long time.
That is a long time.
And I'm praying and praying and praying and praying. I'm just like, God, like, I don't know what to do in this situation. This hurts so bad. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And I felt his presence hit me hard. Like, so hard that I felt like I got on the ground and I felt like I wanted to crawl under the dirt because I felt his presence so strongly. And he said these very simple words that transformed my life. You want to know what they are?
Yeah, what were they?
He said, she is but a vapor, seek me.
Ooh, that's deep.
And I was like, man.
Like, dang.
Immediately, I was like, why am I even crying?
Yeah, I was about to say, you probably felt like, why am I even worried
because
about
it
this?
brought this realization. And I feel that God gave me, for a very small, brief instance, what eternity felt like.
Wow.
Like, I knew that I couldn't fully grasp it. But it was kind of like you were stepping into that and then he just like sucked you back. So it really changed my life when it comes to relationships. Not all relationships are bad, but all of my attention was on this issue.
Yeah.
You know? And like I said, I was young and I didn't have a lot of relationships. And the Lord, I was seeking God at that time. You know, that's we have a relationship, but I was seeking God, but I was so focused on her, you know, and it was really messing up everything. It was,
you were missing like what?
Yeah, and it was like making things awkward,
right?
You know, and so whenever he told me that, I was like, all right, you know. So that's where I went, and so went through college, and I was around different girls that I liked, but nothing ever come of it. And so I was just kind of like, not that I wanted to write dating off. I was just living life, you know, trying to figure out. I was coming up on graduation. I ended up staying and getting my master's, but I was like, you know, I don't know what to do right now with this relationship stuff. Because it hurt so bad to really put time and effort into, I just kind of put it to the side because I didn't want
to have to be vulnerable, which we kind of talked about last week. But
and it's just I didn't want to deal with those emotions, you know. So that was a difficult time in life, but it definitely shows me now that we are married, and it makes me appreciate our relationship more.
Yeah.
You know, because God has given you to me as my wife.
Right.
And it's helped me to appreciate this relationship a lot more.
And it's special because it's a commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of, I wouldn't say like the same situation necessarily, but I would say it was definitely a difficult time before we met. I feel like I was just kind of seeking for attention wherever I could find it. And, you know, I knew what I wanted in a relationship and I knew what I didn't want to settle on. Like some things I'm like, oh, okay. But like the really important stuff I didn't want to settle on. And I ended up, you know, dating a few guys and messing around with some other people. And I'm definitely not proud of it, but I just learned that through that I deserved commitment. Like I deserved to be loved.
Yeah.
And I realize now that we are married how important those fundamentals are and to not settle on them. So, like, I'm really thankful you came into my life when you did.
So I have a quick question just because of what you said. Like, you feel like you deserved commitment.
Yeah.
And so I feel that a lot of times, I know for me, it's like you don't want to settle.
Right.
But you hurt so bad sometimes because you long for a connection with somebody.
Well, I felt like when I was dating or whatnot or going on dates that I was never going to find what I was looking for. Like, I felt like all the guys I was finding or had some interest in me, I would have to give up something.
Yeah.
And I knew, like, in the back of my mind, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But also at the time I was like, man, I think that's why I stayed with like one of them for as long as I did.
Yeah.
There was no commitment there. Like, we didn't even call each other girlfriend, boyfriend.
Wow.
But we dated for like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, why did I waste my time on that?
Yeah.
But I mean, so I did end up settling in some sense, but the Lord knew what he was doing and his timing is perfect.
I know when I was 16 years old, we went through this program called True Love Waits with my church. So basically staying celibate until you're married. Mm-hmm. That was a big, I knew that I wanted to find somebody that was pure in that sense of like not having sex before marriage.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about it, I felt if I've stayed committed to this, then I want that girl to have stayed committed to it. Mm. And that drastically, in this day and age, drastically cuts your chances down. For sure.
I think that was one of my biggest challenges as well, was wanting to find someone who waited till marriage.
Yeah.
Also, and like you said, it drastically kind of made
it cuts the playing field down.
Yeah, choices down. So,
which is good if you know where the people are.
Right, but they're kind of hard to find.
Yeah. I think we should talk about how we met.
Yeah.
So
that's a funny story.
Do you want to talk? Well, I want to.
I'll go first. From your
because it kind of goes into that. So I worked as a supervisor at a Chick-fil-A on the college campus that I was at.
Love me some Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, and I had a friend that worked there with me. I'm not gonna name him, but he's a really cool guy. Mm-hmm. His personality to me was goofy, right? So not picking on him in any kind of way. So don't hear that. Like it's just the way that he was. He's a really funny guy. And he comes up one day. He's like, "Bro, I got a girlfriend." I was like, "How?" And he starts telling me where they met. I was like, "Where did you meet her?" He says, "I downloaded Bumble." And I was like,
good old Bumble. In
my mind, I was like, man, if you can get a girlfriend, then I can get a girlfriend, So
I just love that was your thought process.
Yeah. And I was like, yes, I think this can happen. So it sparked this interest in me to say, all right, I think I'm ready to venture into this and try my hand at it again. So what I did is I downloaded dating apps. I did download Bumble. I think I downloaded Hinge. Mm-hmm. I downloaded Tinder maybe for like 2 minutes and decided that was not the way to go.
Yeah, if you're a Christian out there trying to find your significant other over dating apps, I don't think that's the way to go. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend
That's just
Tinder.
A personal choice because there was a lot of...
You do you, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there I did not agree with. Anyway, I downloaded the dating app. There were a few girls that I talked to. Nothing ever really came of those. Mm-hmm. And I remember coming across your profile, and I remember, I think I had went past it or I seen it, and I was looking through your bio, and I was like, man, like she seems like she'd be cool to hang out with. And I remember seeing, I think you had like a picture of you with a kayak or something.
Yeah, I did.
I
think I did.
And I was like, I really hope she doesn't expect me to get on a kayak.
That's what you thought. Oh my
well, because like I turned them jokers into submarines.
Stop.
You know? So, but I was just like, all right, I hope that, but I hope she doesn't want me to try to get on a kayak, but we'll try it out. So I remember messaging you, and on Bumble, it puts the choice in the woman's hand. So you like it,
the
and
the woman has to message first, I think.
So you can swipe and say, yes, I like you. And then the woman has a choice to say hello or reject the profile.
Yeah.
So this is where it would pick up with you.
Yeah. So I was actually at a friend's house and we were just hanging out watching a movie or something. And at this point, I had dated a few different people only for a short period of time. It wasn't like months or years or anything. It was just, I'd go on a few dates here and it didn't work out. But I was like, I'm done with this. I don't feel like putting any more effort.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just gonna not. And then
not.
I saw that I'm just gonna not. I saw I guess you had swiped yes for me.
Yep.
And I saw it like pop up on my phone that night and I was like, fine, I'll just say hello and see what happens. But I do remember on your profile, I think why I swiped it is because I was like, oh, he loves Jesus. I do too. Maybe it'll work out. And you play guitars and I thought that was kind of cute. I was like, oh, he plays guitar.
I don't even remember what I put on there now, but
it was like you were like in a green t-shirt with a guitar on a stage. That was your main picture.
Yes. I remember.
But yeah, so that was from my perspective. I was like, fine, I'll just say hey. But then you ended up asking me to go get coffee.
Yeah, and
later. And at the time, wait, before you go there, at the time he was vegan as well. So I was like, oh man, where are we gonna eat at? Like
sometimes
it's really hard to find vegan options.
I was trying things out because I think when you go through weight loss, you're just trying to find something that works. Mm-hmm. And it was good, but it did make things kind of difficult at sometimes.
Anyway, so we were trying to find a place to meet up.
Yeah, so I was like, a coffee shop. Everybody likes coffee, apparently.
Except me.
And so I was like, let's meet up at a coffee shop. And she agreed. And we joke now about it because I was like, babe, I don't know if you would have told me you didn't like coffee, I think I would have, not saying I would have changed my mind, but that would have been like, I don't know. So we decided to meet up. And
at Starbucks, I think.
It was Starbucks. And I remember we had talked a little bit, and I went on a camping trip, and I finally got you to give me your Snapchat. And I wanted to make sure, like, you weren't catfishing me or anything, No. So I was like, man, if I could just get her to send me a picture or a video. And so we were Snapchatting back and forth. And I was like, why don't we meet up? And
I will say this is something I really admired about you is he took the initiative to actually meet up because I had like gone through a lot of guys on the dating app, but they would like talk for a few minutes and then that was it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I guess you don't really want to meet me. That's fine.
I know we talked. I was going to my parents' house and it's about an hour drive, and we talked for the whole hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right,
I'm glad that you like to talk a lot. He actually talks more than I do, I think, but I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So I went camping and we talked about meeting up, and I was like, let's meet up at the coffee shop. She agreed, and comes the day when we're supposed to meet up, and she messages me. She's like, I can't meet up today. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, it was a rough day.
This rush of emotion of like, here comes rejection. She looked at my profile, and she doesn't like me. And
that's not at all what happened.
It's not. Though. But in this kind of like a side note here, that's how the devil works, though. He doesn't even want you to think about, well, what happened to her today? Maybe her car did break down. Maybe she did have a bad day at work. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I'm like, what's wrong with me?
You thought I was going to ghost you.
Yeah. And so I was like,
Which folks out there who ghost people, it's not cool, okay?
Yeah.
So please stop
just
doing it.
send a message.
Just
a pigeon or something. Just get them a message.
pigeon.
Just get them a message somehow and say it's just not working out.
Yeah, that was my little rant.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Back on track.
yeah. So we ended up. She said I can't make it. I said all right. Well, let's reschedule. And I asked her. I said, why don't you let me come over and make you vegan tacos?
Okay, and I thought this was very bold. So the reason we didn't end up going out that day was because I was at work and my car had broken down like right after work, and I was just like crying. It had been a rough day, and I didn't want to meet like a potential
A mascara running down your
future
eyes and
husband and be like crying all day
Yeah.
or all night and just not into it. So that's why we didn't hang out that day. I was not ghosting him. But yeah, he asked me if he'd come to my house, and I was like, ooh, I don't know. First meeting
date.
at the house, I was like, that's a little sketch, especially as a single woman. Like, and I had just moved into I had purchased a house that July, and I think this was September. So I was living by myself as well. So I thought it was a little sketch, but I was like, oh, it may be okay.
I knew that I wasn't a creep. So
yeah, but I didn't know.
I know. And I was like, well, maybe this might be a little forward, but who doesn't like free food?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd rather just try to make food. And I feel like I had some leeway because you ghosted me the first time.
I didn't ghost you.
We joke about that, but
well, anyways, we ended up meeting at Ingles first because I was like, I can't just let you come
feel it out.
Yeah, I can't just let you come over to my house for the first time. Like, that's just a little weird. So we agreed to meet at Ingles to go grocery shopping together. And
I was going to follow you home.
Had texted one of my friends, and I was like, hey, this is what time I'm meeting him. This is what time we'll be at the house. Like, if you don't hear from me by this time, come check on me, call the police.
Yeah. Reach out. And it's good to have friends because it's a big step to have somebody come over like that. So we ended up meeting. I remember you were wearing your white and pink sweater.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, like she looks good.
Oh.
And I was like, I could see this. And she had a very bubbly attitude, and
I think I was nervous.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're meeting somebody, like this guy could be a weirdo. And so we went into Ingles and got everything for vegan tacos. Now we eat steak tacos. So that's how that went.
Yeah. No, I mean, I give it up to y'all vegans, but I like my meat. I'm just going to say it.
It's been an interesting journey with trying out different things like that. So, but yeah, we did that, and we dated for, I think it was like the second or third time that we had gotten together, and I was like I want to date you.
Yeah, you were like the first person that wanted commitment, and I was like, and it's what I had been wanting.
Yeah.
But I was also kind of nervous. I was like, wow, this is actually commitment right here. Like, I don't know. I mean, I said yes, obviously, to be your girlfriend. But I don't know, after I said yes and you had left, I was like, oh man, what did I just
agree to? Is this right? I remember it was, we dated for 6 or 7 months.
6 months.
6 months. And it was just, I've never really been into this, like, well, you just know that when you meet the person you're going to marry.
Yeah.
But it was interesting in our situation because I was like, man, like I could really see myself marrying this girl. And I think I was 34 at the time.
Yeah.
I think. And I was, I know what I want out of life. I know what I would want in a partner. And you met a lot of that. Not that have this huge, extensive checklist of stuff, but not everybody's perfect.
Right.
But whenever you get into relationships with people, you want to have somebody that you're like-minded. You have the same vision for your life, somebody that you can walk through life with and not be at odds with each other.
Right, you're equally
Yeah.
yoked. And I think that was something really cool when we met, is that I had just moved into this house
Yeah.
and I wanted to find a church like closer to me.
Yep.
And so he actually ended up leaving another church. I
Yeah.
mean, not because of anything weird or anything like that.
Well,
Well, a little.
there was
That's another story.
It wasn't nothing. It was just some stuff that I feel like I got pulled into the middle of, and I don't want offense to be in my heart, so I was far enough away from it to say I'm just gonna go to this other
Yeah,
church.
you just felt like it was time
Yeah.
to move on. So
Yeah.
we ended up actually finding a church together, which we love. It's Hope Church, if y'all ever want to check it out.
Yeah.
But
And that was probably one of the first things that really stood out to me is when you invited me to that church. I didn't know it at the time. I think I was in the lobby, and I got saved it was Restoration Baptist at the time. I got saved at a play called The Rapture, and it scared me. But I remember I was 12 years old, I believe. I'm pretty sure I was 12, and I felt a change. I felt this power of God, and I was very scared because I didn't want to face judgment like that. Mm-hmm. And it really shook my life at that time. But what I found out later, I was in the lobby and they were talking about restoration. They're like, yeah, this used to be Restoration and this church merged. And I was like, hold up. I was like, so this like used to be they're like, yeah. I was like, this is
look at there,
full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah. So that was one of the first things that I was like, there's something with this girl, and so, but I remember we had talked about marriage, and I remember when we went to your mom and dad's house to tell them, and we're sitting around the fire, and you're like, yeah, we're gonna get married, and your mom's like, you're gonna
I don't
what?
remember this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because she didn't say it directly, but with her face, she was like,
her facial expression, you could tell.
you're gonna do what? And so
I don't know if I said we're gonna get married.
well, we were talking about it.
Yeah.
And so this started this thing, and I was like, I think this can happen.
Yeah.
And I remember when I started to plan how I was going to ask you to marry me, and then I remember having to ask your dad for permission. And so that was an interesting journey to do that. And so, I think they came down and we talked about it. We went out for a walk and talked about it. And he's like, gave me his blessing.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, that's check number one. I need that. I got the blessing of the parents. And so I remember I wanted to ask you to marry me in a field of wildflowers.
Yeah, those are my favorite flowers.
Yeah. And the only wildflowers that I could find are on the side of 85. And I was like, how weird would it be to be on the side of 85 trying to find, a place to eat? And I did drive around to look, but I couldn't find any place. And I'm like, why does nobody have wildflowers? And so I'm just racking my brain with this. I'm like, man, what do I do?
This was probably around, I think, March.
Yeah, I think.
March-ish, yeah.
And so I remember there was one day you had kind of caught on to, I think I'd asked you, I was like, how do you think I would ask you to marry me?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you'd probably bring me to some field of wildflowers. And I was like,
pretend we're taking a photo
yeah.
shoot.
And I had it planned out because I'd already talked to my cousin about it. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then there was...
Yeah, I'm a good guesser.
Yeah. There was this time I was like, I can't do that. She already figured me out. I said, so I got to do something completely out of left field that she's not going to see. And I remember there was a weekend where I was planning this. I was like, I'm going to do it at the house. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do it in her house. She's not going to see it coming. And so I had purchased the ring.
You purchased it way before, like
I did
on Valentine's Day.
because
he got
I got
Valentine's
a deal.
Day special, guys, on my ring.
Yeah,
And he told me he had it, and I was like,
yeah.
"Why'd you tell me?"
Well, you gotta have some kind of anticipation, as we had been talking about. I was just excited. I mean, I've never done this before.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know?
didn't either.
Yeah, and so I was living in Greenville at the time. She was living about 40 minutes from me, and so I was like, I'm gonna do it at her house. It's like she's not gonna see that coming. And I remember the day that I was going to ask you, I had already had it set up. I think we were gonna go bowling, and I had got my sister-in-law to take you and my mom,
Yeah,
and
we
y'all went out
to
to
go
get your nails
our
done because that's you had
That's
you
a
had to
thing.
have your nails done.
If you're a lady, it's a thing.
Yeah,
So
And-
men listening, if you're planning to propose,
yeah.
make sure your woman goes and gets a manicure before.
But just think about bowling because you got to use your fingers. So, and she's also left-handed. So I was like, well, it was an oversight,
fine.
but it's fine. So I remember setting this up, and we go out, and I had my cousin. I went and I think I had a key made so they could get into your house.
Yeah.
And so
Isn't
completely,
that creepy? Like you took my house key and
I
had a copy
trusted
made.
them. I trusted them. And so we had them come over, and they set the place up. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I remember taking you to, we were out bowling, and I had kept trying to check my phone in the middle when she was bowling.
Yeah.
And so I was,
I
texting
remember
them,
that.
trying to set everything up.
I was getting a little not upset, but I was like a little frustrated. I'm like,
Yeah.
why is he on his phone? This is
Yeah.
supposed to be our date night.
And I'm over here trying to mastermind this plan. So after we had got done bowling, I had texted my cousin. I said, hey, we're on the way. And so we end up going to her house. Mm-hmm. The lights are off. And I remember your brother's girlfriend at the time, her car was parked kind of farther away from your house. And you're like, hey, is that?
And she had a white Jeep, so it was very recognizable.
She's like, that looks like my brother's girlfriend's car. And I was like, no, it's not that.
Yeah,
not
you
their
just,
car.
like,
not their
brushed
car.
it off.
Yeah. And so I was trying to just kind of get in there quickly because I wanted to get in the house first, grab the ring, and be ready.
Yeah, he
Bolted.
he left me hanging at the car, didn't open the door, just ran to the carport. I was like, well, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Like, I thought something was wrong because he had been texting earlier, and I was like, what is his issue?
Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't pick up on it. So the scene is set, and I'm like, all right, I got to make sure I don't fumble this ball. I was like, I've got to get in here, grab the ring. I know where it's at. And when I walked in, I had given a vision to my cousin of what I wanted, and I just left it with her.
Yeah.
I said,
She
hey,
did a great job.
yeah. I walk in, and I was shocked. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Wow.
The half second you had
Yeah.
to take it in.
I took it
walked
in, and I was like, this is beautiful. Like, you outdid yourself. And I was, I was like, okay, this is cool. So I grabbed the ring, and I go to the middle of the living room because it's in the living room, and I think I'd shut the door.
You did.
Yeah.
I
So
was like,
I shut
fine.
the door.
See you later.
And she had my cousin had put these flowers on the floor, wild flowers.
Yeah.
And there was a table set up that had tea lights on it and a big sign that said, marry me.
And it had flowers.
Yeah,
on
the backdrop had
and
flowers.
flower petals on the table.
It was like a black backdrop, I remember.
Yeah, it was
and she
really
had a
pretty.
light in there, had everything set up, and she was ready to take pictures. They had somebody videoing. Your brother and his girlfriend at the time were there videoing. My cousin was videoing. They had your parents on
They were
FaceTime.
FaceTiming our parents for us so they could be a part of it.
So it was this whole thing. And I remember Katie walked in, and she's like, no, it's not supposed to happen like
let
this.
me tell this. Before
Yeah.
I walked in, so I cracked the door, and we have a dog,
Yeah.
and I thought he had ripped something up. I didn't really, it was kind of dark because it was just the candles lit. So I couldn't really exactly see when I first walked in, like, what it was.
Yep.
So I was about to say some choice words, which I probably should not say those words anyways, but I opened the door and I was like, oh my gosh. But then I looked up and I saw your face.
Yeah. And I remember I thought that I was going to give this massive, extravagant speech.
Me too. I was expecting.
And I was like, oh, Katy, I've waited so long. And I literally just said, Katy, will you marry me?
You didn't even say my name. I think you just
No,
asked.
I did.
You did.
There's video evidence. And so, but I remember just asking her to marry me. And she's like, yes, I will. And I was like, bang, got the win, And so, we celebrated after that.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. We didn't have a chicken dinner.
Yeah. So we celebrated, had some Martinelli or something afterwards. And that was pretty fun. And it was just this really beautiful moment because I like to be thoughtful when I do something for somebody. I want them to remember it. So I knew that I had a really good chance of knowing that you were going to say yes. Mm-hmm. We had talked about it.
We had talked about it.
Yeah. I'd already talked to your dad.
I knew the ring was already here.
Yeah. And so I was like, all right, she's going to say yes. And so I wanted her to remember every time she walked through the door that this is where I asked her to marry me. And so that was kind of the idea that I had behind it. I try to
so sweet.
Yeah, I try to make it.
You were very thoughtful.
Yeah, to make it thoughtful for you, so you can reminisce every time. And if we're arguing in the living room or something, it's like, remember I was on my knee right here,
Yeah.
So it was definitely
is a sweet memory.
It was definitely something that I wanted to put thought and effort into, and to be able to give to you, and so
we ended up, getting engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And then since I was a young girl, always wanted a wedding. I didn't want a huge one, but I wanted to be able to celebrate with all of our friends and family.
And this was probably what, 20?
This was 2020.
2020-ish.
Right. It was during COVID-19, that lovely time in our period of history.
So it was around that time, and we had found some venues. Mm-hmm. I was against having a big wedding.
Yeah, Thomas didn't really want
and the reason why, and I'll explain this. There's differing opinions on this. I am not against people having big weddings. I just didn't want to because I didn't want to have to carry that debt with us for 5-10 years into our marriage, when we could use that money for a really cool honeymoon, or putting a down payment on a vehicle, or paying off debt.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be in debt for somebody to party on our dime, in a sense, when we didn't have the money. Now, if we had the money, if we had $50K sitting around, I would have no problem doing that.
Yeah, we didn't have 50K.
So we did argue about that, and that was tough. I was just like, Katy.
That was probably our biggest argument, was leading up to the big wedding.
Yeah.
But we did end up finding a venue, and my parents agreed. Well, our verbal agreement was we would pay half and they would pay the other half. So we were like, okay. So we got engaged. I think it was April-ish. April?
I think so.
I think it was April. We got engaged around beginning of April, and we planned on having our wedding in January of the next year.
And that didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, we had thought about it, and we were actually meeting one of my mentors / friends.
Yeah.
She could have been my mom at the time. He was coming over, driving from Greenville to have dinner with us. So I got to her house first, and we had already talked previously about,
doing
having
an elopement.
Yeah, doing an elopement, having a smaller wedding, and my walls were starting to come down a little bit, but I wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
But I showed up to her house, and she was like, out of nowhere, she was like, Katy, why don't you guys just go ahead and get married? And I was like, what? I was like,
I like her.
You're telling me this? And this was before you had gotten there.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, if she's telling me this, then maybe I should talk through it some more. So we had agreed that night we would come home, and I think we talked about the next day.
Yep.
Or was it that day? I can't remember.
I think on the way home we were talking.
Yeah, on the way home, and we had talked about it for an hour or two. And I said, okay, as long as my parents are okay with it,
Yeah.
then I'll be okay with it. Because growing up, my family was a little more traditional, and I wasn't sure how they were going to take it.
And what I liked about our marriage, I felt that the Lord was breaking traditions in our life. Because I think about, number one, having a big wedding. We ended up having a smaller one due to some, we'll get into that in a minute. But also, the night before our marriage, I went to leave to go home, and there was a crazy storm. And I don't mind driving in storms.
Like severe thunderstorm.
Like it felt like there was a
and
tornado
it was hailing.
outside.
It was hailing.
I said, I'm not driving in this. And I don't mind driving in storms, but this, I was just like, I'm not driving in this. So I remember your parents were here.
Yeah. And we had a full house.
And I stayed in the spare bedroom on the floor.
I know.
So that was really funny. But we had talked to your parents, and we were going to do this semi-big wedding in January. So I was going to pay half, and they were going to pay the other half. Well, your mom ended up getting COVID.
Yeah, my mom got COVID.
Like bad.
She was in the hospital for 2 months, and one of the therapists or doctors told her that everyone, after she had gotten better, that everyone who had COVID as bad as she didn't make it.
Yeah.
Like, she was...
We were praying for her.
Yeah. It was a little bit of a rough time.
Yeah. And so, but during that time, I had already put a down payment on the venue. I think it was around like $1,200 or something like that. That was, I think, our stimulus check, basically. So it was money that we had, but we didn't have, I guess. But when she got sick, they basically had to take the money that they were going to use for the wedding to pay bills and different stuff like that. So that ruined, I'm not going to say ruined our plan, but it definitely stopped us from moving towards that. And so we decided my lease was coming up in the apartment that I was in, and Katie already had a house, and I was like, why don't we just get married? And then I know your friend had taught you about that. And so we ended up having a small, very intimate wedding with just my immediate family, your immediate family, and I think my cousin.
And we called my parents, like after the dinner, we had called my parents the next day. And I told, like I said earlier, I said, as long as they agree, I agree. And so we kind of explained the reasoning behind why we wanted to do it. Mainly, we could save money on both our mortgage and rent at the time, and it just be more convenient. And they were like, I think that's a very mature decision. Yeah. And I was like, what? I was like, are you sure? I was just surprised at how calm they were about it.
Yeah. And it was interesting to me because I remember praying. I'm like, God, is this the woman I'm supposed to marry?
The day of.
Well, I mean, I've been praying about it.
Yeah.
But I've been praying and praying and praying. And it's just like there's these small little things that were there. Like our parents have the same anniversary. I think they're different years, but the same day.
Same day.
And I was like, that's interesting. And just having these small little things that the Lord was just like, dude, this is the woman that I want you to marry.
You could see the Lord orchestrating everything to the way it was supposed to work out.
And so we were able to get married, and we went on our honeymoon. We took a week off of work, and I think we went down to Savannah.
That was great.
It was really fun. Yeah. We stayed in a hotel and just enjoyed being married. So that is our story of how we met. And I believe we'll probably do the next episode on just the celebrations and the challenges we've had coming into marriage. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. We want to hear from you guys, though. So if you'd like to reach out, you can email us And we would love to hear a story about how you proposed to your significant other,
Yeah.
and
Or how you're going to.
or how you're planning on it if you have not found the one yet.
Yeah.
But keep the faith; they're out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So until next time, it's Tom
And Katie
on the Tom and Top podcast. We love y'all. Peace out.
Bye.